Hi, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church, Stony Stratford, and we're continuing our series of short talks in the Ten Commandments. And today we come to the 10th commandment, Deuteronomy 5:21. You shall not covet your neighbour's wife. You shall not set your desire on your neighbour's house or land, his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbour. We might wonder with this last commandment whether it hasn't been covered before. I mean, what about the 8th commandment? You shall not steal. Doesn't that cover this kind of thing? Isn't this about wanting people's stuff? Well, there is a difference, and it's a subtle one. In one of the memorable exchanges from the film The Silence of the Lambs between the serial killer Hannibal Lecter and the FBI agents Clarence Starling, when he questions what the serial killer she is seeking does, she gives a load of explanations, but he goes, no, no, no. He covets. And then he defines coveting. We covet what we see every day. You see, this is interesting because the actual word that's key in this is your desire. This is not so much about doing, this is about thinking or desiring. Interestingly enough, when we get back to the fall of mankind in Genesis 3, 1-7, verse 6, it says this: when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. Did you notice that seeing, pleasing, there's the seeing, then there's the inward reaction, seeing and desirable, then that leads to the action, which is to disobey God, which is sinful. Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 8, the teacher or preacher who's going to impart some wisdom, we hope, during the book, says this: the eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear of its hearing. We're always anxious for more. We take in so much of the world around us. Well, why is this a bad thing, and why can it lead to very bad ideas? Well, in the letter to the church at Colossae in verse 5, Paul the Apostle writes this: put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You see, greed, again, it's not an action. It's an inward action. You see, these things are invisible sins. Well, what's the right attitude to have to all this? Well, interesting enough, later in Deuteronomy, the Lord outlines how they are to behave to those who are less fortunate in society. This is Deuteronomy 24 and verse 17 and 18. Do not deprive the alien, the fatherless of justice, or take a cloak of the widow as a pledge. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. That is why I command you to do this. Now, you see, they were to remember their plight when they had been hard done by, and they were not to do others down. It sounds an odd thing, doesn't it? Don't take a cloak from a widow, but if you don't have much to start with, a cloak's a pretty valuable thing. And the actual care extends, verse 19 of Deuteronomy 24. When you are harvesting your field and overlook a sheaf, do not go back and get it. Leave it for the alien, the fatherless, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. Again, you see, there's this picture. You know, don't deprive the less fortunate. To be a foreigner in a strange land was to be vulnerable. To be a widow or fatherless, well, there was no social security in those days, so you could be in big trouble. Now, one of the key things we have to remember is that the land they've been given was God's to give. So if he wasn't depriving them, why should they deprive others? In the end, we are constantly told in the world we live in, we need more. Watch a TV program, the adverts will come on. What's it going to tell you? Well, you need this. Your life will be infinitely improved if you have this gadget. Or maybe you've got that gadget already, but hey, you could do with a new one or a more up-to-date one. It's always a case, isn't it, of the eye never having enough of seeing, nor the ear is full of hearing. Well, what is the solution? Well, Jesus teaches what the solution is to all this. He says this in Matthew chapter 5 and 33 and 34. And this is when he's counselling people and he's teaching people not to get concerned about the troubles, trials and the wants of this life. But seek first that's God's kingdom, and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. We do live in times of hardship and difficulty, but to know God, even in this, is to know that we have someone who cares. And that's another thing as well, isn't it? That the church, particularly the people, we see this back in the book of Deuteronomy, the book of the law, they were to look out for each other. A good society does that. And a good society should realise that we owe everything to God in the first place. He has reconciled us through Jesus Christ coming and taking our wrongdoing upon himself, the times we block God out. Let's remember to seek God's kingdom first, to put him first. And really, there'll be troubles in life, but we have someone on our side who cares. Thank you again for listening.